Today's March 20th, 2025, 3 o'clock. We'll begin the Purchasing and Financial Management Committee meeting. Mr. Kerr, would you do the invocation?
Sure. Dear Father, thank you today for allowing us to come and meet and talk about the county's business. Help us to be of one accord as we move forward with our agenda. And we ask that you always watch over the county and our citizens. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. So with the approval of the agenda, I'd like to entertain adding an item to new business under B, just a brief discussion of the hiring of the new finance director, as far as like where it's going to go and when it's going to get kicked off. So
I will second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we'll add that to the very end.
New business B.
New business B. So with that item added, can I get an approval of the agenda? Motion? Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Recognition of the public, we have none. Report of the committee chairman. So today's meeting, we've taken, I'm sure you can tell by your agenda that we have taken some of the items and pushed them to April. That was to relieve some resources off finance and just take these up next month and give them more time to work on budget. So that will be old business A, E, and D. Does everybody see that?
A, E, and D are going to old business.
They're going to stay there. They'll be discussed in April.
Still one more time, Madam Chairman.
Yes, old business items A, D, and E will not be discussed today
Okay.
to allow finance to get back to the budgeting stuff.
And that's moved to the April meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless anyone objects to that.
So let me ask on D, David, purchase cards, or what we're expecting back from you is a list of the current authorizations and your recommendation if we need to.
Right, we can get the authorizations easy, it's just, we want to make sure we got a good recommendation right now.
I got you.
It's
Okay.
taking a little longer.
That's
Finding the amounts won't be too hard to print a list of short amounts,
but it will have a recommendation.
yeah, we're gonna put a recommended amounts on there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so moving along. I have no other comments. Report of the county mayor.
No report, Madam Chairman.
Report of the law director.
No report. Well, it will come up in, part of it will come up in new business B, but we've got some major concerns about the fact that the 1981 Act was never done away with by this county, and we're technically at the current moment operating under the 81 Act and the 2012 Act, and if there's a conflict, the 81 Act is prevailing. That's my interpretation of how things stand at the moment, and it also changes some other issues, one of which is B, new business B, and what's another big one we need to bring up right now?
Wow, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, there's quite a bit. This might actually need to be a meeting just to discuss some of those issues at a later date.
Okay, and so as we go through the
So we're gonna talk
agenda-
about that now, or you wanna wait to?
Yeah, I'm just reporting what my findings
Okay.
are right now. How deep y'all want to go today is entirely up to you.
Okay, yeah, I do want to have some discussion about it.
So we'll take those items when we get to them on the agenda.
Yes,
Is that the?
that's all I have. Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Chairman.
Madam Trustee,
Yes, ma'am.
do you have a report for us?
I have a preliminary. We had some issues the end of February with the credit card services not sweeping correctly and posting the credit card payments correctly. This affected several counties. They got it reconciled and fixed, but it was just yesterday or the day before. So we've been posting and getting everything balanced. I don't have my official report like we normally turn in, but I ran some reports on our collections and our balance sheet.
Excellent.
I should have those, the normal reports done by tomorrow afternoon.
So,
And I apologize for them being
Yeah.
late, but
So Cindy, quick question. When you say they have it balanced, who's they?
we're balancing our books, myself and my chief deputy
I
Amanda.
got you. Okay.
Software issue.
Has this ever happened before?
I don't think so. Not that I can recall where the credit card system.
So it's an issue that affected multiple counties? Is
Yes.
that- Okay. Well, don't
That
they
have
it
this,
fixed?
our software vendor is eGovernment Solutions, which was actually bought out and called Tax Cama something, Catalyst. And there are several counties in Tennessee that use them, and then there are other counties in other states as well.
Was it the result of a breach on their part? or-
No, I think it was an update that screwed that up. You know how you update software and it screws something else up in the background you're not aware of at the moment?
Right. It was that, okay.
Yeah.
So are these for us?
Yes. This just shows our collections for February and what we have collected so far in March,
Okay.
and then the balance sheet for February.
And the collections, Cindy, you got it balanced, but
I think I'm.
you balanced it back to what it should be in February, March, or what?
Yes, yes.
Okay. That's a year-to-date running total, is that right?
Yeah.
Is this, these are year-to-date running totals on
Okay.
collections?
These are for,
I just need a copy for the minutes of this.
No, those are,
is that a year-to-date?
these
figure?
property tax collections are just for that one single month.
That 1 month?
Yeah,
okay.
the February, the 41 million was all processed in February.
So
just
what's
the month of
missing is your
February.
balance sheet for,
Yeah, that other one,
Okay.
yeah. We're working on that. And then thus far in March, from the postmarked mail, we've collected a little over 11 million.
got it. And that's in line with the collections that you anticipated? for the
Yes.
month?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you having any trouble? Last year, I know we talked about how it all came in at once.
Yes.
But
Well, we
how's your
had
staffing?
we did well this year because we got the bills out earlier,
Mhm.
and therefore people were coming in more spread out instead of all at the last minute with the bills going out late. So that helped tremendously. So we've been able to take care of it.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good.
And we've had a big majority of our little elderly people that are on tax freeze and tax relief have already come in and done their paperwork. We've got, I'm trying to think how many are pending, that we go back and call them and say, hey, don't forget, we don't want you to fall off the program. We've got a few of those left we have to call. But we've had a really good response this year.
Did Hendersonville increase their limits?
They had
Some area.
talked about it, but
They
I
did
don't
not.
think they did it.
Okay. Thank you. Report of the finance director?
This is a question for the committee before I even start on A. Currently, we've got budgets as appropriations, revenues, and various items. There's not really a committee to report to with grants and potential grant issues. Since this is financial management, is probably the most appropriate committee to report it to. So right now, the grants are ran through my office, the majority of them, and the projects. So one thing I do want to bring to the committee's attention, it's on item page number 2. We have a broadband ready grant that we took on. Didn't write the grant, but received what we've become aware of at this time, and Dustin here's the one administering it's made me aware of it. Part of the grant, I think about $48,000, almost 49, is supposed to run through TCAT of Portland. When we contacted TCAT of Portland, they have informed us that they've never heard of this grant. There is a process running through their president and various things, which may be a rather long process. So right now, we're in the spot while we're concerned is we've got to run through that process. If they decide not to take it, then we've got to ask for an amendment from the state, and then we're going to have to go out and bid an alternative. Trying just to make everybody aware, we do have a broadband ready grant for about $100,000, moving along good. Other than that, and we may end up losing the 48 if we can't get all those lined up, because I'm not really sure why they weren't consulting when the grant was written. So basically, they're written into the grant. They never heard of it when we contacted them.
What is your window?
I don't know what's the final window on this one.
October 31st of next year.
But the problem being is the fair thing or the correct thing is to let TCAT to try to go through their full evaluation. We don't know how long it'll take. Because we were informed it was a full thing involving their president and a committee and before they'll take on grants. So they were written into this grant without any discussion or consultation. I don't know why. So if it takes
After the-
nine months to do that, and then we send it to the state, and it takes 3 or 4 months, we're at the end with the bidding process, we may or may not be able to get that done.
So after the meeting, if I can talk to, and find out who you're talking to up there, maybe we can get you, maybe we can find the right people.
She's
or-
running to the right people,
So
the
it's,
president.
it's
yeah.
just,
It's that they've got a process, they've got a full-blown evaluation process,
they gotta do.
yeah, that they've got to do, and they were never consulting, so we contacted the person that handles grants, and they said they didn't have the authority to do this, it had to go through that whole process. So we're not sure, they had never heard or seen this grant before, so we contacted them. I'm not really sure what's going on with it.
Okay, well, we can talk later.
That's
Maybe
what we've been
can-
told by the TCAT.
TCAT of Portland.
TCAT had told us that.
Is this a one-year grant, or is this something that should have been reoccurring?
This is a one-time grant, this one is. And most of the issues we've ran into, we've handled internally, such as Title VI and all the other issues. This one, we're just reporting because we're concerned on the timeframes at this point. I know October's quite a ways off, but still it'll be here before we know it.
October of 26, or 25, you said next year.
Right.
20.
But the portion after we even bid it and start it, we've got to complete it. So there's a whole, we should really be the bidding and starting right now. So we're down in the process of getting approval. And then if they don't want to take on the grant, then we've got to get approval from the state. So that may take a couple of months,
At least 2.
at least 2 months. So as soon as you start stretching those out, they come along really quick.
Can you start that, getting approval from the state and say, if we don't get it, this is Plan B? Or you wanna
There's a
wait?
planned grant, but you're gonna really need to wait, because it's gonna be
Okay.
asked for an amendment, so we don't wanna ask for an amendment.
And then the
Because then
other
if they
company-
grant it, we're gonna have to ask to amend it back,
Got it.
and they may or may not do that. So we're kind of stuck in holding kind of the one that was originally in the grant at this point, TCAT. Just to make you aware of it, something we ran into. We'll keep you apprised as far as when we hear something from TCAT. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. Old business, as we mentioned, we'll move A to April. Item B, request minutes of the Elected Officials Association. And Mr. Lawyer, you said you had something for that. Did you say, I thought you said B. Yes, I'm sorry.
I was talking about new business B.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Actually, for that item, we've discussed it many times, and I understand that the Elected Officials Association hasn't met, and is it still no plans to meet? So, can we just note that there are no, in the minutes, just note that there are no minutes, and if we, would that be appropriate? That there are no plans, I mean, there's no need of us continuing on this. I'd like to just note for the minutes that there are no minutes, and they'll meet sometime in the future months, and if you could report back to us at that time.
It's completely your discretion how you want to handle that.
That would be,
So remove.
I believe so. I mean, it's the same, there's no need of us saying.
Remind
it every-
me why that's important for us, for this committee. Is it because it moves things to the subcommittee?
It was the 5th member of the subcommittee was appointed during that meeting. but there are no minutes from that meeting.
So by taking this off the table here, we're saying we don't care if they meet?
No, we're just
Or
saying
we
there's
don't care
no,
at
there's
this
no
point that
minutes.
we have no minutes. So we're not waiting on these minutes to move forward with any of the committee's other
If,
duties?
I believe if the subcommittee was to meet, they would meet without that elected member because there's not minutes.
So is that
As long as they have a
procedurally correct?
quorum.
Yeah.
We have quite a few committees and boards that run shy from time to time, as long as they can meet the quorum.
Does that make sense, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, we do have one appointed for that, Catherine Strong.
And it's those minutes that
So-
support it.
Yeah,
Can you have another meeting and get minutes?
we'll see.
Without-
We'll see if the officials want to meet,
Yeah.
but she's still.
But that's the only
she's
item
still
that it
duly
affects.
appointed to the policy subcommittee.
And once she's appointed and we produce minutes, the next step is for them to hear what policy changes need to be made and come back and make a recommendation to the full committee for us to consider those, right? Is that, I guess I'm trying to understand where we are in this whole cycle.
Well, that's only if the chair calls for the policy subcommittee to meet on an idea.
Yes, and I would like to call for them to meet, but now we have the issues that we'll be discussing down in new business item 2.
Let me stay on that for just a second. If we don't have Ms. Strong on the committee, if you guys don't meet, would we still have a quorum?
Yes.
And it would still be legitimate for this group to meet without her technically on the committee?
When was she elected? It's an annual election, only stays for 1 year. Has it been over a year?
I would think
Probably
so.
I believe
over
so.
a year.
And she's no longer, it's an annual, it says annually in the private act, elected, chosen annually.
So I'm just, Mr. Mayor, maybe I'll just move forward and meet and get what we need as a committee. And maybe what we could do, Madam Chairman, is set a date when we think that would be reasonable to get. If it's not possible for Mr. Mayor to make that happen, then we move forward as a committee and do the work of this committee. I mean, I just feel like we've been sitting in idle here for a year on this, and I don't know if it's designed to work like that. I mean, I think we need to fish or cut bait, we need to get that done. So I would leave it up to you, of course, but I mean, I just don't think we leave it idle for another month.
So when we get to new business and we discuss item 2, we will see that this item is a conflict between
With
the
81.
81 and the 12.
So maybe it kind of, if we pull back to 81, maybe it kind of resolves itself.
So I would say at this time, this is a small item compared to the
Yeah.
other items.
But it's a small item, it's been on our agenda, we're spending time every month on it. So it's either, let's resolve it, or the law
So-
director says, hey, it's now moved under a different aspect of the law.
So to address what the subcommittee was tasked with the last time they were together, and I welcome the finances director to correct me if I'm wrong. One of our priorities is the purchasing policy. And that is pretty much the priority that we need to work on. I can ask at this time if the members would all take it upon themselves to pull out the purchasing policy, read through it, and be very familiar with it for next month. And whether we go into the subcommittee or not, we're all ready to go and go ahead and make your edits, your additions, put your thoughts and your comments together.
I think that's a fair way to look
Are
at it.
you referring to the purchasing policies of the 81 Act?
The ones that we're currently operating under, the county purchasing policy that was created. And I
Those
guess
are in
what we'll,
conflict with the 81 Act, and we were just told that if they're in conflict, we operate under the 81 Act.
I don't think the things that I'm thinking of will be in conflict. During the last subcommittee meeting, one of the items that was asked was that credit cards do not receive a cash back, such as our Lowe's card, and that item could not be resolved by the subcommittee. So that, I'm pretty sure, probably is not addressed in the 81 Act. There are items in there, just everyday items, in which we can all go ahead, take a look at, and see if we're good with or not good with, and be prepared for.
Sounds good.
I'm just talking about the everyday workings of how purchasing is working, how the purchase orders are flowing,
Okay.
good internal controls,
Okay.
not anything big there. Is everybody good with that? Mr. Long, if you could send us all out, again, a fresh copy of the current purchasing
We'll
policy.
send you the link, it's on the website.
Thank you.
Do we still have copies of the recommended?
It's
Changes.
moved around so much, and then there was questions of the members and the minutes right now. We're gonna have to determine where you
Okay.
guys landed. That's what we're looking at right now. We can send the final we worked on. It's got a lot of yellow markups and reds
I
and,
think probably should send out the latest version, since we haven't agreed upon anything. Let's start with that latest version.
the latest one they're working on, the latest one
The
approved.
latest one that you're working on, your
We sent
recommended
all the
changes.
yellows and the reds on it, yeah.
Are your recommended changes reflective of the 81 Act?
No, we're not even going into talking about that yet. We're just talking about like as she's saying, the purchase card limits and stuff not involving that. That's a whole entirely different discussion right now.
Okay.
Okay, so item C is the payroll items. That item is the salary survey.
Do you me tell you where we're at on that? We emailed out to the consultant, page 6 and 7. She's informed us it would be a relatively short time frame, and it's about 4% more expensive than last year. I think originally it was budgeted for 12, so it's 12,272, and there was additional 1,000 to look at the sheriff and EMS, so you're looking at 13,520. And I looked at the commission line item that contains that, and there's more than 13,520 in there right now. We just have to evaluate. So the question is this something you want, especially we're going to discuss this 81 issue in a minute, is that something you want to even take on at this point, or show it as non-expended this year and budget it next year?
Let me ask one thing about this. I mean, I've been involved in some of these different organizations, and typically there's a front-end step to this where you have all your department heads come up with job descriptions, and so it's kind of a data point into the survey. Has all that already been done, and this is just the back end part of this?
This is the update to it. There's actually was
Okay.
a full-blown survey done, is it 3 years now? It was 2, I think it's 3 years now.
So does this update job descriptions at all?
No, this will just update based on the market for jobs that's changed, new jobs, and jobs that should move positions. That's what they will be looking at. So they would come back with an Excel sheet. It has your different job classes and the amount they're recommending should be the start pay, the medium, and the top pay. That's what they came back with last time. Last time they did provide us job descriptions, and we do have those. So they're job descriptions for each unique position. So we have, I think, right now about 1,200 regular employees. So I
And
think
you
job
feel pretty good
descriptions-
about where the job descriptions are in terms of matching the?
I think right now this would just update the salary. I think it's something you probably need to push forward, but I think you really need to evaluate the full job descriptions and salaries and everything, just like the discussion a couple of months ago. You have exempt and non-exempt employees. By and large, we're paying all the exempt employees other than department head as hourlies. But some of them are coming back now and treating them as exempt, so we have a lot of inconsistencies. So if you're wanting to go back and get consistencies on how you're treating your employees, you're gonna need to go back to start with and make sure that we are 100% comfortable which employees are exempt and non-exempt as your starting point. And then go pull the market survey again for what the hourly rates are, and then look at your actual policy on how we're paying overtime. That was another one that I think the county law director and I was looking at that brought to the committee. There is, in your main personnel policy, some inconsistency in the language. And how I was told to handle that earlier from our former law directors based on historical patterns. What we done is if you're a department head, you're automatically exempt, you're a qualifier, elected official. If you are an exempt employee and can document that with us, we let you choose you're gonna be treated hourly or exempt. By and large, they're all being treated hourly. If you read our personnel policy in one place, it says that exempt employees are not necessarily have to be paid that, but it doesn't say you can't. Then it goes in other places and says they're paid for 40 hours, and then another place it talks about this. Back under the compulsory agreement, which everybody's been signing, it says you get paid extra for extra hours work, including your exempt employees. So right now, a lot of that it's developed over many years, really needs to be looked at closely. We've grown and grown, and it just needs to be looked at very closely at this point.
So with the survey that this consultant's going to do, would it include some of those aspects that you've articulated?
It would only include looking at market data points, but it won't account for how some people are paying exempt employees exempt and some are paying hourly, which could be quite a difference in pay.
Well, let me offer something up, and then you got to shoot it down if you don't like it. But it seems like to me we need to make sure we have the front end part of that up to date, which means the current classification of our employees, the current job descriptions, before we spend the $12,000–13,000 to do the salary survey. I would almost say, let's pass on that. Let's get the front end right and come back and do the survey. And then I think that would be more meaningful at the end. And I think, it would give us a good leap forward on the next survey that we want to do. But I've been involved in these different organizations, and if you don't get the front end right, the back end won't look good either. So
I think you need to start with your policies. Probably they all need to be.
well, that's part of it. I mean, we don't have to litigate that today, but I'm just saying, from what I'm seeing and hearing, and this has been on the agenda multiple times, maybe we, again, try to get the front end where we want it first. And if we want to push this to next year and budget it after you've got that step completed, then let's do it. But if not, I'd say we table it for now. I just don't see us spending that money if we're not fully comfortable about how the data points work up front.
What I would think would be your most progressive move would be to look at very specific points, start looking at your policies and this exempt versus not exempt, followed by updating all your job descriptions to be clear who's exempt and not exempt, and then based on that, get them to evaluate all these job descriptions in the market.
Yeah.
That has never went in that order. What we did was job descriptions with the assumption that we're going to be paid consistently, but that's never been dealt with. And I've had, because I had the concern there were inconsistencies in how we're paying, and I've asked the law director to look at it. He had, I think, the same concerns and actually additional concerns. I hate to speak for him, but he actually had more concerns than I did on the.
There is absolutely no consistency with that policy, and that's just ripe for abuse. And I've seen it happen from questions that have been asked about people that I would have traditionally thought were exempt that are getting overtime. And I just can't understand why, other than this weak policy gives us nothing to say no.
Maybe we pivot off of getting the survey and pivot back to you coming up with just a plan on how to do this. I just don't see spending money unless we've got some of those things straightened out. And let's say you went forward with the survey and you got a bad data point up front, and it comes out and you're busting these ranges wide open, and people, say, hey, I need a raise, or do the other side. I just think that we'd be better served to wait. I just do.
Some of the other things I've seen is you've got employees that were on higher level with more time making less than other employees. That's in the county, but then the employee making less may be getting overtime. So if you're going to look at folding that, you probably need to fold the overtime into their salary. That's what I'm doing.
I would want to know, Mr. Mayor, what you think. I mean, you'll be real close to that.
Well, thank you, and I agree with you. I think the county officials had some issues with the plan when it came out, with the way the job descriptions were done and the calculations were made. So I think it would serve us best if we just take a step back and get that foundation right before we spend any money on updates.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
I'd just like to add one more element. I'd like to see an org chart, because I don't think that we can clearly look at their job descriptions if we don't know how many people report to that position. So we did ask for some org charts last year in budget, and we got some. They range from fair to good to they didn't arrive at all. So an org chart for these departments to show us the levels of
And
responsibility.
it was fair and good because you didn't get some and.
No, it was
but
fair
the-
and good because some of them might have one bubble and two bubbles. When they might have needed like a lot more layers.
Yeah. I see.
So,
They
some
weren't
people
detailed
went
enough.
into more detail. I guess that's how I should say it. There was a lot,
Detail.
some had more detail than others. Some had minimum detail. And a couple of departments, I don't remember, didn't present at all.
That could be part of, to me, David's.
That's what I'm
plan
asking.
To incorporate getting
Um,
up-to-date org charts.
We've requested those in budget, and that's, I mean, that's kind of probably, they've requested as part of their budget package, and that may be something, you guys may want to send a request back to the budget committee, if you do want a copy of those org charts, because some of them still have not presented them.
We could ask them to attend our meeting and explain why that's not been accomplished. I mean,
I believe last year it was a requirement of your submission.
I think this year too.
But some didn't submit.
I understand that, but that's,
Well,
you
you're
have
actually-
somebody willfully not complying.
So Dave, could you get an updated email out, just saying, hey, part of the submission, we don't have it, our committee is asking for it?
Well, I think we're gonna give a list of the budget committee
Okay.
who didn't do
That's
it.
fine.
Then we'll forward it on over to this one, we'll have to provide org charts.
We'll need new org charts. We added 21 new employees last year. They're gotta go somewhere, so I assume everybody has a new org chart.
I've got a new one, I don't know how many submitted the org chart. How many, do you have an idea?
I mean, more than half. But there's still some that didn't.
Is there nothing in the system that can generate them? Obviously, everybody's got an approver somewhere in a system.
Not like you want to see.
Mm.
Doesn't,
I don't know, like those
No.
are created in Excel. and
okay.
they're not. So we've got one.
Like, how do you know who approves somebody's payroll, who approves?
The ones in Cronus have a structure like that, but it's,
Not everybody's in Kronos.
yeah,
Okay. But could Kronos generate?
maybe part of that. Like the departments in Cronus, well, is gonna have them anyway, like the sheriff's department has an org chart. We have an org chart, more complicated than what's in Cronus itself. Like Beth may approve a lot of the employees under me, but there's like sub-levels of answering before there, so
Okay.
there's more structure than what Cronus would show by far, because we have like an AP manager, a payroll manager, then Beth and then me, and then we have projects over here on the side, and then the payroll manager, you know, is over enrollment and several other things and benefits. We do all those HR functions too. And ours has the structure, that you can see it.
So, as we talk about the job description, each job description title should be on that org chart so we can see where they fall, as far as the detail that we're gonna be asking.
That's the way ours is.
Yes, yours
We can
is.
send you a sample of ours out.
If you could send it out to the department heads, a sample, that would
We
be
have a
probably
sample for
helpful.
finance.
And it would show kind of the format and the level of detail that you're asking for, this committee's asking for.
I think we updated ours about a month or two ago. I'll check on it one more time, and then we'll send it out. That's kind of a sample.
All
But
right,
now,
so-
Do you need a motion on that?
Mhm.
Okay, I'll.
Budget committee's already made it part of their budget package. That's what we're kind of looking at. And
We're gonna-
they make forms and requirements, so it was a requirement of budget commission.
So Todd's gonna make a motion for the salary survey.
Yes, I'll make a motion that we table that till next year and wait until we do all the foundation stuff before we tee it back up.
The mayor's second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes. Items D and E will pass on until next month. Brings us to new business. Purchasing and bid items. Mr. Long, can you walk us through that?
I have, on page 8 through 33, 8 is the number of PO exceptions that we've had. What we have? On page 8. 8 and 9 is the number of PO exceptions we've had to date. To date, we've had 24 bid exceptions. Right now, the mayor has a request in there for a PO exception for failure to obtain a PO. and he passed out a corrective action plan, but I do not concur with this particular. And I'll be happy to provide additional details, but that's, Miss Norfleet never did those POs. Ever.
So, I don't care which one of you wants to explain.
So this is what I'm saying, is right now, this corrective action letter is not true. Miss Norfleet never did a single PO for that.
Do we have POs?
Yes, I've got a copy of all the POs from 22 if you'd like.
And
I don't know where it came up with that there was a change in the policy here. We didn't change anything. I went back just to make sure I was correct.
I'm sorry, it's this additional page.
Right.
I'm sorry, I couldn't figure it out. Okay.
Basically, the corrective action plan is that finance changed it, and that's not true. And right here, Miss Allison can pass out the whole package. There's all the POs all the way back from 22 on the elevator.
so just work with me for a second. So we've got POs.
They failed to get a PO on this.
Oh, okay. And you said-
Basically, the mayor's office did not get a PO on this one. We asked him for a corrective action plan based on the committee's request, and the policy says he's supposed to provide us a letter. The letter came back was that apparently there's changed something in the office for the POs going forward. There's no change in the POs. If you look at the packet, the first PO I put all the way back from 22 was Jamie Muncie for elevators. The next one was Jamie Muncie. The next one is Jamie Muncie. The next one is Chris Johnson. The next one's Ramona Thaxton. The next one's Ramona Thaxton all the way through. Miss Norfleet never did those POs. Additionally, we've been asked to send out, they said they did not know about the requirement, but we send this out every month. Because the committee's requested it, and if you go back in the packet, we have a PO that's sent every month telling you, asking you to look at your POs and sending you a copy of the purchasing policy. Comes forward, this is the one this committee specifically asked us to send to everybody because there was a shadow of a doubt that anybody knew about these purchasing policies. If you look on page number 3 of the attachment that was sent with that, just 3 from the back, it says, and I highlighted in yellow, unless explicitly exempted in this document, the county must issue a purchase order before any commitment to purchases are made. Items or services ordered, contract signs, or purchasing cards or pre-purchase. So that's kind of my whole thing is I just don't concur with this particular letter given to the committee or sent to my office. And then the last page tells you the requirements based on the county commission adopted policy of what you need to get a exemption from a purchase. If you look on F, A, B, C, and D, so after the first purchase order exemption has to be granted by this committee if it meets items A, B, C, and D. So it's really up to the committee. On item A, it says you cannot be an habitual offender. Of the purchasing order policy, a letter adequately detailing the circumstances and basically the corrective action plan. And then C and D it does meet.
I think we're missing B, C. It's the back pages again.
They're right here, it says item F is.
Here's another one, then those must have not copied right.
Which one? I think
Oh, no, those don't have back copies.
Oh, they don't have back
No.
copies? Okay, I was looking for, I'm sorry, because
It's
when he
right
was
there.
mentioning,
No, those don't have back copies.
okay, it was when you were
So,
mentioning.
David, what is your recommendation?
I have A and,
It's really up to
Yeah.
the committee to
it's okay, it's fine.
determine if they do an exemption or not, and on this one right here, it'll be up to the committee if they determine if this meets your exemptions and it requires, first on the policy, that it meets item F1, A, B, C, and D. So you guys have to determine if you think it's not an
That's all that
habitual,
was included.
or if you think they've adequately detailed the corrective actions.
Oh, I see, these are.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. It's really up to the committee members, but as far as what my office received, we have not received what I would consider a good item B. We have one where they basically have told us that they didn't know that, And then it says to prevent in the future, I don't know, we've sent multiple times given them the policy, so.
So let me ask, I mean, if it's the one I'm thinking about, this is for elevators
Right.
maintenance, right? So that's, and I'm not trying to downplay it at all, I'm just trying to understand it. So this is not like you're going out and buying a vehicle, you're going out and buying something big. You're maintaining your elevators, which has to be done every year. So, if I'm sitting in your seat and a department goes out and buys a vehicle, other than Toby's group, you can buy them all the time. I would say then, hey, that's a problem. That's a one-off that we should really be paying attention to. But when you're getting routine maintenance stuff and look, I read the emails, Mr. Mayor, and it looks like this one slipped through, so I get it. But I put a little different emphasis on just maintenance stuff than I do one-off items from just a control perspective. But it is what it is. It's written and we've got to comply with it. But
There's issues there too. You've got to think this elevator contract involves a contract. We have a specific county commission policy for contract review. When we do a purchase order, we review to make sure you've got your contract, the budget's there. We review certain controls, so when you don't do the PO, the controls aren't there.
And I
then the other
think
questions-
the definition of habitual, we need to figure out what that is as for a committee. And is it just constant repeated errors of the same type, or are they different types of errors? I could almost put them in different categories, but a purchase order is that is needed, no question. And I'm trying to understand it more than anything. I'm not trying to cast blame on anybody. I think, Mr. Mayor, your group is the one that has this one, but we have somebody else next month. And I think this committee just needs to understand how we define habitual and what are the remedies if we think it's habitual.
There's 11 out of 24 of the PO exceptions this year.
Okay, that's fair.
That's what I'm saying, is you guys are gonna have to determine what's habitual. But most years before we've had down to what's the fewest we've got here, 3 total countywide maybe, few, very few. We usually don't have 24 and we definitely don't have that.
So I propose those questions. What's habitual and how do we define that?
I
And
think
if-
foreseeability becomes a factor as well.
Yeah. And I guess I'd ask Mr. Mayor, give us your thoughts.
Well, this was obviously a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
My office did not understand, and they're in the learning process still. They've never done the government work and still learning that process. You can levy what fine you wish. They've learned from this, and let's hope they don't repeat it.
That's helpful.
What steps are they doing to ensure, do they have a copy of the policies?
Yeah,
Do
I've spoke to them about it.
Is
We
that-
only have 2 people.
Is the person that is in that position now, are they relatively new?
Yeah, they came on board when I came on board.
Okay, so a few years back, okay. I'm inclined to grant the exception with Mr. Mayor's recommendation that he's got the training in place. But I will say that with caveat, next month we have them, that we start looking at it differently. So that'd be how I'd want to approach it.
I'd like to see us add to this exception report what corrective actions have been taken on these items. I know we talked,
They're required to provide me a letter with that, and that's what I'm saying.
that
This
was,
is what I got. So right now, you're wanting us to come in and provide the corrective actions versus making the department further policy. Is that what we're saying? Because right now, they've received multiple copies of this policy every month.
Well, where we are, I think, is that we haven't defined what habitual is. And I think that we need to put some borders around what that means. If that is the trigger to move to some other remedy on this, other than say, hey, please get it done, if there's a fine or if there's something else there that we need to think about, then
If you don't grant an exception, there's not a fine. Then what happens is your private act's really clear and so is the 81 Act.
Yeah, here's
And
the
it even
problem
gets
you
worse.
get into on the 81 Act is deviations could result in a Class C misdemeanor and subject removal from office or position. So,
I mean, the deviations that still have the front end of habitual.
not in the
deviation.
statute. Who fails or refuses to perform the duties required by this chapter,
And-
or who fails or refuses otherwise to conform to this chapter.
And the purchasing sections in your private act and your 81 Act says if you don't, for not verbatim, we can read the language if you want to, if you don't follow the act or the local option of law, it's not a county liability. It's your personal cost.
So, what I'm hearing is there's no exceptions at all.
You guys, based on your policy, can grant an exception. So you've got to determine in good faith if they meet your exception requirement, grant them an exception, and then they're still compliant with the act. If they just come in and are not doing what they're supposed to be outside your policy, and you say we're not granting an exception, then it goes back to those issues.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we should go there. I'm just saying where I'm coming from is I don't agree with this letter here, and I think that the new corrective action letter needs to be submitted with the correct information on it and a corrective action plan on item number 2. Because it says it goes to my office or item B. As far as the committee here, it's really you guys' responsibility to determine in good faith what you think habitual is. Do you think 11 out of 24, 12 out of 24? Whatever you think is habitual, and then at that point, if they don't follow the act, then you don't pay the bill. I mean, that's really the way it's set up.
How tight do you
Otherwise, it don't
want the
function.
news to be?
Otherwise, your
How
system
tight do you
won't
want the
function.
news to be? That's completely up to you all.
Well, I think there's some, we've got to get some clarity between the 12 and 81 Act. But if it's.
81 trumps. If it's 81's in place, what we've been told for county technical and what our legal believes and what you can interpret when you read down into the act itself. The 81 will trump the 12 in any kind of conflict.
Gotcha. No, I certainly understand that. And the 81 Act has the same verbiage about habitual.
It does not reference habitual.
It references if you don't follow the act.
It encompasses failing or refusing to perform the duties required by the chapter, or fail or refuses to conform to this chapter.
Well, and I'll shut up, but I just have a few thoughts on this. I don't, one is the department failing to do it, and I think probably so. Are they doing it by malice? I don't think so. I mean, it's just part of the process of training new employees. Do we need to have it tighter? Yeah, certainly. But I mean, my recommendation, and I'll make a motion that we do this, is that we approve it, and Mr. Mayor understands what the parameters are, we'll move forward on it. And I don't know that we could, and I'm with you, I think 11 out of whatever that number is certainly, if you're doing an audit, that's a failure. I mean, you're gonna fail that audit. But in terms of process here, we, as a committee, I don't think have provided enough granular description of what habitual is, and we need to do that before we would move to any remedies on this particular exception. Next month, if the sheriff is in here wanting an exception, then we have to treat him the same way we would this. So I think it sets a precedent. We need to, and again, I'm not gonna make light of any exception. But this is an elevator maintenance contract. Again, it's not like going out buying a building or a vehicle, something that is a one-off purchase. But no, these are just my comments. You guys could pile on and say, no way. I mean, but.
I'm just saying that mine is item 2. I need to get it. As far as the habitual portion, that comes back to the committee wholeheartedly on you guys. I'm just giving you information.
So it's, if I understand right, your concern is the letter. and the fact that you don't think that it represents the facts.
And then my other one is right here, item F, A, B, C, and D. C and D, it clearly meets. A is up to the committee, does it meet it? B is, I'm just not in agreement, I'm just saying, I guess with a better thing, I want to put in the minutes that I disagree with this particular statement in this letter.
Okay.
Do we have to approve it this week, or can we request?
We've got elevator maintenance ready to be paid, so just like, I'm not gonna say the chairman, but as your committee member said, it's not a one-off, it's an elevator maintenance. Mine is, I just want to get on the record that, number one, we didn't change anything. Number two, we have been informing everyone, and if we follow the policy, the reason, because we put them in your packet, the reason for the corrective action Ms. Boyd's asked for will be in the packet. So by letting them not do it, we have to call, get their reason, put it in there, and create it for you versus them following the policy from the beginning. So the policy is really clear. You come in and you give an explanation of what caused it and how to correct it. And that's exactly what you're asking for. It's in
And
the
that's what
policy.
I would like that too. The sheriff brought in
It's in the policy.
a really nice example last month. I don't know if we can give the mayor
And number
more time to
two-
use that as a template of, I call it an SBO situation, what happened, what was the business outcome, what do we
And
got to
me to be
change
clear,
it?
we 100% did not change anything to cause that on area.
Well, maybe let me also offer up, if you've got these new set of facts or sequence of events, maybe you could take a look at them, and if that changes how you address this letter, then maybe that, just for the record, we get that part of it, nailed down. And then the committee moves forward, grants the exception, then we start to understand what habitual looks like. And Mr. Mayor understands that it's close, but we're not there yet. But I think just need to communicate on the facts here, on what generated the letter, and understand you're generating this to comply with the need to have a corrective action. And to Colin's point, maybe a more detailed corrective action. But I think there's a miss here on the facts in terms of what he thinks it is, what you think it is. I think that needs to be reconciled in order to kind of move this thing forward. And if you feel led at the next meeting, maybe bring another letter that if you've got more facts that it's closely aligned to what David thinks, then give us a letter, maybe a little bit more detail on the corrective action, and we can move forward on this. I just think we're burning up a lot of time on this. I think you got it, we got it, and I think we've just got to figure out how to define some of these metrics and what habitual means if we're going to hold folks to that. I'm usually the one on the other side, pushing hard to get it done, but I think, once we put our foot in the sand, you got to do this with every exception that comes to this committee, and I just think we've got to be consistent and fair. So,
I have a question. You have 2 employees. Are both of them processing contracts? So it's not a matter of, for training, you recently had the new person start a matter of months ago. What kind of training was that person given?
We went through the
Okay.
personnel policies, the purchasing policies, and she actually came from finance, so she had a little bit of background already.
So it was a miss?
It was a miss on the executive assistant.
So she just, she just forgot to do the purchase order. She maybe, did she forget, or did she not know it needed to be done?
She did not, yeah, she thought it was done by Kim in the past, she just did not know.
Was it that specific contract that she thought there was already a PO in place for? And there wasn't?
It wasn't.
Is there something in the process that we could have that they attach the POs to the contracts? Do we have that?
I will,
You're supposed to submit an unsigned contract to the PO. I mean, there's policies
So-
over there.
so yeah, going forward, we will.
So if, with the document that Mr. Kerr is discussing, potentially bringing back something more if your policies could reflect that they should have the PO attached to the contracts before you sign them. I'm just making a recommendation, I'm not telling you, I'm just asking, if that would help. At this time, I would, I would agree with Mr. Kerr. It is the elevator maintenance. It's not like you got a new Cadillac for the mayor's office. And it is a quite expensive amount of money. And the remedy is not a fine, as Mr. Long has pointed out. It's all or nothing. Either we're paying it or we're not. And if we're not, it would fall back on the mayor himself to pay.
And we would reap the benefits, so.
Yeah, I would be in turn to agree that I would agree to pay this item. I would not pass on, I think we've passed habitual. We've had many, and I understand it's the turnover, and it may be with these new procedures. But I hope that we don't see any more PO exceptions. But I would be in favor of approving this.
I'll second that.
Is that a motion?
I'm still discussing, I was going to hear
Okay.
Colin's input.
I mean, I'm still kind of stuck on B. I definitely would support paying it as soon as possible, just with the caveat that it's nice in the meeting notes to have the details so that if somebody goes back and wonders why Terry and Colin and people voted for something, you know, they don't have to listen to an hour and a half of debate. They can say, oh, okay, this is what happened, this is what's, you know, real quick. So that would be the only thing I'd like the mayor to submit something by next meeting, or if we can table it to next meeting. But if we need to vote on it today to get it paid for it, I'm good with that as well.
All in favor of paying this invoice?
Is this, with his amendment, we've still got to deal with that?
Oh,
I'm not proposing an amendment. It's more of a best practices that I'm recommending.
Oh, you're just doing this for the minutes?
Yeah, I'd like.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I'd like just as a request, a personal request
So
is all.
we're just doing a single motion to approve?
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to add anything to it. It was just a personal appeal at the end.
With the details of this appearing in the minutes, right? I mean, what the ask is.
Yeah.
Okay.
so we'll try that vote again in support of paying this invoice for the elevator maintenance 5-year contract. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we pay the elevator maintenance people. Just a side note, next month I hope to discuss more detail about maybe putting some more resources towards oversight to purchasing when we look at the purchasing policy. So item A was the TKE is the elevator, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
It's
thank you, I just wanted to verify that. New business, A2, discuss the TCA.
Discuss how we got here, is that kind of, and I can start all the way back to 2009, and I can tell you what happened before me by reading the resolutions, and I don't have the exact dates because I don't have them with me, but the 1981 Act was adopted in this county somewhere, I believe, originally in the late 90s. Didn't implement it, so I think it was around 2001, they came back and repealed it and did a 2002 Act. And subsequently, I believe it was a 2003 amendment. I was hired in 2009 and we were under the 2002 Act with the 2003 amendment. Sometime around 10 or 11, and I forget the exact dates, the county came in and adopted the 1981 Act. They sat here and did not get the implementation plan done. So the state got involved and started giving them findings, and the recommendation, because we met with the mayor, was to move it forward.
May I ask you a question?
Yes,
on
ma'am.
yours? Why did they go back to adopt it? What was their reasoning?
Well, I thought it was
Intent.
I was gonna,
Oh, okay.
I don't know, I was just told we're going to adopt the 81 Act, and I was gonna be involved in implementing it. I came under the 2002, so.
So I was
It was
just
a
wondering if
commission
there was something
decision,
going wrong. It's okay if you don't know, I just wanted to ask. Thank you.
I don't know, I can't speak, they were not necessarily, I guess, getting along is the best way to put it, but I can't. Wasn't a commissioner or a school board member, so I can't really talk to that part of it. Which part was we at? They took out then they readopted in 2010 or 11. They came back because them on the school board wasn't necessarily getting on and did not do the implementation plan timely, so they couldn't get it approved through the committee. So the state told them, really you need to do something else, or basically another consolidation act, or you need to push forward in the court system because you have a duty to basically enforce your private acts through the court, or your optional laws. The commission after that brought it to the floor, and it requires a 2/3 vote to repeal. It failed the repeal vote because we went back and looked at it. So they came back, and in 2012, the finance committee, school board, everybody got together and created a 2012 act very similar to the 81. It was the first before the amendments. The purpose of the act was two things: to consolidate the schools, remove the parts that they didn't agree with, and it was also to repeal the 1981 act was the intent. 2019, we started bringing the schools over. We didn't have an IT department, so we had technological issues at the time, just like Dr. Langford said. The schools decided they would prefer not to be over here because we didn't have an IT department. Finance portion was running fine, but the system itself, we were having some technological issues. We had no IT department. So they did a 2019 amendment to remove the schools. Coming down to now, we're in 2025. There's a discussion of selling, what's the name of that piece of property, Ms. Boyd?
123 Winchester.
There's a name.
Children are
people.
Children are people.
With the Children Are People building was being discussed, so Eric had a very specific question. He's researching all the sales statutes, and he says, is 1981 any way or fashion involved in this? And I said, my understanding was, and so was the commission, everybody involved, that the 2012 Act repealed the 1981 Act, the 2012 product, the 1981 law. And Eric can speak if there's anything else. I believe he researched it, and what he was saying is what we're looking at today is the actual act itself, number one, only talks about repealing private acts. Nothing about the local optional law itself has its own repeal revision. So, and I don't know the exact order, they actually contacted County Technical, which deals with this, and they contacted their attorney. And their attorney their understanding or their belief is this is not a repeal by action of the 12 Act of the 81, that the 81 is still in place. And Eric can give some details if I've missed anyone. What we believe, based on CTAST, what Eric's seeing, and what he's even shown me, is you right now have the 2012 with the 19 amendment on it and the 1981 in play. And the way it would work is you would go with the most restrictive. The 2012, you take all the restrictive stuff as long as it does not conflict with the 81. When it conflicts with the 81, it's basically trumped by the 81 and you go by it. So, for instance, the timekeeping would all stay in place. The part where you remove the consolidation would not stay in place. The penalties in the act would stay in place. The approval of the policies would not be in the sub-policy committee anymore. If you read the act, it says it's with the actual committee. The hiring the finance director, it goes through a whole group, and I think Eric may want to sit here and kind of go through some of the details of the major changes, but that's how we got here, but they are significant changes between the act. Well, after that, me and Eric started looking at the 19 amendment. We have even some concerns about the 19 amendment if you do remove the 81 Act. So right now, I'm not giving you a recommendation or anything, I'm just saying that's how we got where we're at.
Well, I won't, if I may, I won't take you down the rabbit hole on the amendment because I think we're under the 81 Act. But the irony to me in all of this was when the 2012 Act, it had to be accepted with a 2/3 vote. So they got the 2/3 to do that, but could never, in my minutes research, get 2/3 to repeal the 81. So somebody wanted that thing alive for some reason. So here we are with it. And to David's point, we don't have one versus the other. We've got two running together. So in a classic legal view, what they're saying is here's your minimums you can further restrict yourself or put further burdens on yourself all you want. If there's a conflict, this is gonna prevail, but if that requires you to do extra stuff that doesn't conflict with this, you gotta do it too. So that's why we're operating under both the 2012 and the 81. And then we get down to, it's very specific about committees. It's got the budget committee, investment committee, and purchasing committees. It's very specific about the numbers that have to be on there, a minimum of 5 members, and I think that affects at least one committee, does it not?
The way it is right now, the budget committee's got 7, so it's fine.
No, but wasn't there a committee that's not referenced that only has 4?
That's the subcommittee, it's not referenced in here.
Right, so we have 2 issues there. It's not referenced and it's got less than 5.
And if you guys are the purchasing committee, you're fine, but if you create a separate one, then you gotta have 5 members, so we'll take that on there. Maybe that's one you're looking at.
Yes.
Because they have to
yes.
have 5 members appointed by the legislative body if you create a separate committee, it can't be. You have a 7-member budget committee you create under general law, and it would be out here, but it's 7 members, so you're okay with it. But,
And now we get down to one of the significant parts for the moment because of what's about to transpire is the appointment of the director. The committee shall appoint the director, period. Now, there will be some commission back and forth because there's gonna be appropriations like pay and things like that that are gonna have to be approved, so that would be a factor, but technically per the law, the committee is the one that appoints a director and may dismiss subject to approval of the county legislative body. So that's a very significant change everybody needs to be looking at soon, because I do think there's been some kicking around of hiring a headhunter or a firm or something to start
Yes.
shopping.
it's brought up in budget,
We spoke of it in the last financial management
Okay.
meeting.
and let's talk about budget a little bit.
Can we go back to the 5-member item? Is that 5 commissioners or 5-member?
5-member.
5 members appointed by the commission.
Yes,
Thank you.
and they do not have to be commission members, but they can be.
So this committee actually agrees with the makeup
Of the original, of the main parent.
It agrees with the 12 Act because it says 4 members appointed by the county commission need not be members, and it says the 3, it's the same. But then when you go on down to the big one, you've got an implementation plan of 2 years. You're way off the bill right now. There's less requirements for the director and deputy director, but you'd be under the more restrictive one now. I would assume.
So what, from just an enforcement perspective, if we've not complied, or we might have complied with 81 in some areas, and we might not have, and just full implementation of that act, is it just a finding from the state, or do we have to report back to them that we haven't complied, or does the full commission need to acknowledge this, or what's the?
From a compliance standpoint, from a legal perspective, you're out of compliance. What is the practical reality of that? I would yield to David, because he deals with the comptroller and all of that.
I've already, because I'm required to be upfront and open with your auditor, so we go ahead and that's required by the standards of external auditor. So I've already informed them and sent them the correspondence from county technical systems. The sections out of the 2 acts of why nobody believes it's been repealed at this point. And their preliminary response is they'll go by the legal advice because there's no attorneys. Kind of the same thing might of your standards. If we have a legal question, we take competent legal advice under the AICPA standards. And that's where I'm at right now. I've taken advice because our understanding was at the time from the legal advice that the 12 Act and the 19 repealed the 81. So our feeling this whole time was we were in compliance, but now just recently, within the last couple of weeks, we found out whenever.
And since
it's
we're
not-
there, I will point out that we get back into the fact, you got private action, this is considered a public act. And it says, once adopted, this may only be revoked by the same method used to adopt the chapter, which is the 2/3.
And also anything that conflicts with it's repealed. So even in addition to this.
It's suspended until this changes and complies with the other one, But this is always gonna trump until they change it.
So the consolidation of school into county, that was an 81 requirement, and we today have not, we're not there, we haven't started there. So that would be one big item.
Yes.
And was it also a 12?
Originally, it was part of the 12,
As part of the 12 before
but the
it was
19
amended?
amendment, yeah, made it optional.
But the 81, it's not optional.
It's not optional. The only thing that's optional in 81 is if you've got retirement homes or hospitals. Yeah, they are not for you. And we sold the hospital way before my time. We don't have any.
And the only other significant issue at the present moment is the misdemeanor statute where they referenced, and it's just not along this policy line. It's basically any official or employee of the county who fails or refuses to perform the duties required by this chapter or fails to conform commits that Class C misdemeanor and subject to removal from office or position. I just want to point that out because as an attorney, I need you to know that's out there. And if somebody really wanted to go way down the rabbit hole, I mean, they could make all kinds of word arguments about us being out of compliance, the nature of it. Will that happen? I don't think so.
Could you read that again? I'm sorry.
It's,
Because I have a question. I just want to hear you read it before I ask you.
any official or employee of the county or of any institution or agency thereof who fails or refuses to perform the duties required by this chapter or who fail or refuses otherwise to conform to this chapter commits a Class C misdemeanor and is
So-
subject to removal from office or position.
So right now, if I decide not to take your advice and say, oh, that's not it, I could be removed from my seat?
Yes?
The other one.
That's what I thought I was hearing.
The other significant change
I'm a
is
citizen.
the budget.
I can
Which won't-
willfully not.
Won't affect you guys, but it will affect the county is the budget calendar. The budget calendar is
Yes.
much more tight and spelled out in the 81 Act.
And we're already out of that, which is a problem.
But we're trying to follow it as closely as possible.
We're trying to remedy, but as an attorney, I can only tell you we're out of compliance.
So to me, I mean, getting Dr. Langford up to speed on kind of where we are, I think is important because that's the big item is the consolidation of the school into county. That's most of the money.
Yeah, and I haven't even gone down that one
Yeah,
yet.
and I think it would be fair for him to hear that from us or you, kind of what your recommendation or what your findings are of your review.
Yeah, and
'Cause
I do
that's-
know,
That's certainly gonna impact him.
yeah, and I do know he's got counsel as well, and I'd love to brainstorm this. I'd love to make it as easy as possible. Or you want to completely kill this problem, get your 2/3 and kill the 81.
And I will say the original intent of the 12 was to remove the 81. Because somebody made that comment that the original intent was, and I'm not going to disagree because we all thought it did, so we know that was the original intent. Based on what we were being told, it was 13 years ago. And at one point, the act may have read totally different, because the act was originally written and then changed by the state was different, so I don't know where but even County Technical made the further comment, basically if it did even say it repealed stuff, that the 81 has its own repeal, it would still have to have, that's what they're saying.
Could you go and repeal it and change a little bit the 12 Act?
It's two separate processes.
Okay.
If you did repeal the 81, you probably need to look about amending your 12 acts.
Yes, absolutely.
It's got
Because that last amendment completely torpedoed
sections.
several areas in that act.
So other than consolidation of the school funds, what else are the large items that are out of compliance?
What's not out of compliance, but the next one you're going to discuss is the finance director, and here's what you're going to run into. Under the 12 Act, it's specific. The mayor recommends the finance director and is appointed by the county commission. This one says the finance director is chosen by this committee. So you've got that issue going on. And then you go back through there, you got your budget calendar, it's different. You got the consolidation, that's different. That's probably your biggest high points right there. There's probably some little bitty more things here and there, but that's what
We've really not gotten to dig through, it's just happened, what, a week ago?
a little bit, a couple weeks ago, I think, I think the big one was looking at it and getting the county technical back and forming.
Actually, county technical was, in awe that we had not repealed it. They just assumed we had.
I even forgot about the field vote back in 11, and I was even here. It was before they adopted the 12.
So just from our committee's perspective, what are your next steps here?
If we don't get any clarification, y'all need to be figuring out how you're gonna do a finance director. It needs to be
Next
high
item
on your
up.
radar.
Well, we certainly, I think, want to start a search, because it takes a long time, and, I don't know how that works in this budget calendar, or it would work in the
So-
next.
Yeah, and before we go all the way into that, because that is the next item, regarding, still on this, the item, are we getting any clear indication from the comptroller's office?
On the item, they say that they're gonna base it, they're CPAs, so they're gonna base their standards based on the ASCPA code, which says if you got valid legal counsel, you take it. So just like if I have a legal question, the first one I go to, I read and see what I think, and then I go to Eric or our legal counsel. That's where you go.
Sure.
That's the standard. So their standard is gonna be, unless they get different counsel, they're gonna be running by, Mr. Sittler's and county technical. So at this point, they would have to get counsel that's gonna disagree with the in-house counsel here and with the county technical's counsel. Because both of those are agreed. And then when, this is a layman, I read it, the thing says private act, and private act in the local optional law is totally different, and then the 81 does have its own repeal fee. So I can't disagree with anything they're saying. I was going on earlier advice, but, and usually when I get advice, you don't go back and, unless asked to look at it more deeply, unless you got a reason.
And then I've sat in and listened to the comptroller speak at several commissioner events, and I know the comptroller's office wants centralization.
I dare say Dr. Langford probably thinks the 12 Act based on what he understood, because I think when that happened, was he the chairman of the commission then?
Coming in, I believe.
So he was probably coming in then, so I'm assuming he thinks the same thing right now, the 12 Act revoked it. And Beth was here when they did the last finance director search. How long did it take at that time to do the search? Because I remember they started, and Mr. Young was here quite a while and came in to do the search.
Started in, Rachel left at the end of August. It started probably in September, and it was March when it came.
So it took 6 months.
So if we could back up, Mr. Long, can you tell us, can we ask you, we can't hold you to it, I've said it before, we need to know what day you're leaving.
Unless something changes, we're planning to the end of my contract would be this coming June.
So are we saying June 1st or June 30th?
June 30. But the thing is, I'm gonna leave before the end of the day on the June 30 because it makes a difference on our vacation time. Because right now I can carry 6 weeks over the end of the year, I earn 3 during the year, and I get prorated for the number. So if I don't resign before the end of the day on June 30, then I'm going to only carry 6 weeks.
So you're leaving that morning? You're being very specific,
Probably
that's
leave at
fine.
4:30 at the end of the day.
So we'll.
It's a finance person, you know.
So if we start there and not addressing, just addressing the timing.
Then my plan is to relax.
If we back up and we say it's going to take
8 months is a good time frame.
to find someone, 8 months?
Well, if you want to use a recruiter.
How many months
we're
do we
gonna to go.
have?
Right now, you would have 15.
We had talked about a transition period.
A period, that's what the next question I was gonna have.
Well, and whether somebody, if you're gonna hire them to be the comptroller or the head of finance, would they want to sit for 6 months until you've retired? I don't know. Maybe not. I'm not sure I would if you recruited me to do it. But some folks may want to do it that way, but I would think at least a 3-month transition window. So 15 months, 12, we're a year, so we need to get this out of the gate.
In the budget right now, preliminarily, because, you know, we got to do it March 1, I've got 90 days in there, which would be, you know, how many is usually average, like 20, 23 work days a month. So that would be, what, almost a little over 4 months, 90 work days would. And I think I put in a salary of 200, so I'm thinking you're gonna grab somewhere decent between 150 and 2. I think if you go lower, you're gonna lack experience or training. If you go higher, you can get more, but really, do you need to?
Say a range of 150 to 2,
Well, I think we'll get more.
depending on who applies and their qualifications.
You could decide you want to try to make it up for more after that, but if something.
But I do think, you know, there's some nuances here we got to think about, because in the 12 Act, Mr. Mayor wouldn't be that person that makes that decision. But I would foresee this to be a group exercise anyway, even if the 81 Act hadn't reared its head, that we would have had the input on the person that you would have recommended. Terry and I are CPA, so we would be able to assess the technical capabilities of that person, I think. But if the 81 Act is what we use, then this committee needs to move forward. But I would think that a small subset of this committee should reach out to a search firm and understand the cost. And that is a technical position to find, and you're not going to just put it in a newspaper and expect to find the right person, I don't think. But I think you could do it parallel. You could put a LinkedIn, you could do a lot of different things to get it out there. A lot of these, you know, AICPA, TSCPAs, you can throw them out there in terms of jobs. But if we have people we want to recommend, we could, you know, move that up and start looking at it. But I just don't want to be here 3 or 4 months from now and we haven't got a search firm identified and we're not moving down. We've got candidates we're actually looking at. So I would almost propose, I mean, if this is kind of where you land on the legal advice, which it sounds like it is, unless you're going to get that opined by another attorney outside the county, and that's entirely your call to do that. So we have to be able to take it and run at some point and say, this is what we've got to do. And this is an important part of that, because David leaves, that leaves a gaping hole in our finance team here. We can't afford to have that gap. So I'm just asking you, Eric, are you at a point where you're saying, go do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably need to update a really detailed job description, because sometimes we're running into, and Beth can tell you, we're using Excel to do our budget. We're not running into a software package, so they're gonna have to have quite advanced understanding of some things you usually don't, HR. I mean,
Can you put that together, or your team put that together?
we've got one, but it needs to be updated, but I think we probably need a job description and back in additional things that they need to be able to understand. And then your more restrictive of the requirements is your 12 Act. So I'm assuming those will come into play because they don't conflict the other one. There's a minimum in the 81, but the 12's more. So you're going to need to go with the 12 Act's requirements, which would be
So,
a
yeah.
CPA with so many years of experience. And
It's
all that
going
good
to
stuff.
really limit the field.
Well, we can get into that later about what are the detailed requirements, but
So, but what I'd like to stress though at this moment, that by limiting the field, we need to move faster yet again, because it's gonna make it a bit.
can we set a date when you can have that job description ready? Because if we hire a recruiter, that's gonna be the first thing you ask for is the job responsibility.
I'll bring one of those to
So-
our next meeting.
What
We'll make that a priority because I think it's going to be.
Mayor, would you like to speak to this item?
I'm curious how we're gonna implement the schools. I see that as more important.
Well, to me, I see both of them as
So
important.
run them parallel, have Dr.
Parallel,
Langford
yeah.
in next month.
Yeah, and we need to get Dr. Langford at the table and determine how we're gonna do it, either Amanda or Dr. Langford at the table. figure out how we're gonna do that, and that's gonna take time. I mean, that's not something you do in 30 days, that's a big deal. If you're talking about moving accounting processes, bodies, a lot of different things to make that happen. But I hear the charge from our lawyer that we gotta do it, so I
So-
don't think it's an option.
What I would like to entertain today is the idea of going ahead and moving forward request to budget to set aside some appropriation for head hunting. Whether we go ahead and do it or not, that they set it aside, so if we decide, because it's gonna hit budget in April, the soonest we could even look at hiring an agency would be May.
Right.
And then if we gave them 4 or 5 months, we're way deep in the year.
How much?
Does anybody, I
think a lot of them, because we did one for the IT director, and I think we negotiated it down, but they want a percentage of the salaries. What they
Yes.
usually want. It's
No,
gonna-
Oh, you can do that under
20
the fixed fee.
20 to
You do
25%
fixed
is
fee.
probably the range.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, so you're looking at 25% of the, I think it's the gross salary, not counting benefits, but you make, is that correct?
I think it's, yeah, whatever
Let's
starting
go ahead.
salary is,
So you're
20,
looking
25% is
upward.
typical for executive
let's
head
don't
hunters.
set a number for budget. If you could get them some documentation for budget, so that we'll have some numbers to look at in
I'll try
budget.
to call a couple of them.
This committee will just send forward the recommendation that we need an appropriation made for the potential use, whichever way it goes, towards seeking outside guidance if we use it. And Mr. Long's office will provide some details on average cost and to budget and let them
Several
look at
places
it.
advertise, and they're not terrible.
Since we don't know.
Do we, and this may be against all sorts of state and county laws, is there a referral program that the county would do in lieu, like if somebody here knew somebody to be a great candidate and they recommend them? I know that's pretty typical in the private sector, I'm assuming it's probably not a common practice in
Like a
government.
bonus or something, or
Well, yeah, like a
finder's
one-time-
fee?
Yeah.
I don't think we'd ever
I've
get
heard
that
it called a
person
referral
passed.
bonus.
That's
Okay.
something on me, I can
Okay.
hook.
I understand what you're saying, but I don't think with the current climate,
I didn't think it was a thing, I just was, because if you're going to an outside third party and we're appropriating a large amount of money for a headhunter,
Big thing,
but there's people that know people, you know. Most jobs are found because you know somebody who knows somebody. It's not, oh, I saw this on LinkedIn. So just want to see if there's a way to incentivize.
for governmental, you fall under a totally different set of accounting principles.
I assumed, I just
If you
call it
go to
ignorance, I
like,
wasn't sure.
Industrial, it'd be like starting over.
Yeah.
It would be for that person, it'd be like for me living in industrial would be.
Well, come up with the requirements and let's
No,
look
man.
at it. I mean,
so next, when we meet in April, we'll have an answer back from budget on whether they're willing to appropriate money towards a search. We'll also be back at this table, hopefully with Dr. Langford, to discuss the school and perhaps get more information, since this is a rather new topic.
and it's,
Or a new
there's a
occurrence.
cost associated with that too.
Yes, and we can pick up with the discussion on the search then. Discuss, we'll have to have an implementation plan that will include schools and many other things.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, that's gonna take time and.
Do you need us to make a motion to send that? We're not, our request to budget, or can it just go? Do you need us to vote on that?
Since it's gonna be from a committee, it'll probably be a vote, because for the committee to speak, would that be correct, Eric? For them to actually speak as a committee, they need to vote.
Okay, I make a
Yeah, we don't
motion.
have to be some kind of a vote out of it.
It doesn't matter, we can make one. I'll make a motion that we send to the budget committee a request for an appropriate appropriations towards the possibility of seeking outside assistance in hunting for the next finance director. For them to set the number based on information that will be provided by the finance department on common cost.
Second?
Yes.
I didn't know if you were done.
Yes, I'm done. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. That's the end of our items. Motion to adjourn.
Second that.
I met with her from Montgomery County.
Kimberly.
Yes, she's in my CCFO class. I do too.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yes, I like her a lot.
All it takes is one itty bitty little vote.